Hi guys, I'm just jumping on super quick here. I'm not going to be able to be on here for a couple of days because I have to have a very minor knee surgery. I tore my meniscus. It's going to be a very tiny little thing to deal with, but I probably won't be on here for a couple of days, and I just got a look at Blake's motion to dismiss. And I won't be able to deep dive the whole thing, but I just wanted to cover these first few pages because I was so outraged. They call the lawsuit against Blake vengeful and rambling. And I just really want to focus on this idea about vengeful. In my last episode covering Ryan's motion to dismiss, I was sent a video about the music producer and what he had to say about working on the project with Blake. Take a look here real quick.
Just did that for Blake Lively's film, It Ends With Us, which is actually coming out in another week or two. So she called me as we were in London finishing Deadpool, and she's like, she called me out of the blue, and she's like, I've been hearing what you've been doing on Deadpool, and Ryan talks about you so much, and blah blah blah. And she had kind of moved into the lead position of finishing this film, and so we came in and scored the film in 3 weeks from beginning to end.
So, before this film was finished, this was during the editing process. Before marketing, before any accusations of a smear campaign. When Blake was stealing this movie from Justin, we saw their communication. She started this editing with him in the editing room, just the two of them. But we can see behind Justin's back, she was plotting. Because what did she tell this guy? And this guy has no reason to lie about this. And when did he say it? He said the movie was just about to come out. So none of any of this had happened yet, this accusation of an invisible smear campaign. But there she was telling people that she had become the lead person to finish this film. Isn't that interesting? And doesn't that sound like a premeditated takeover? And it also really plays to this word, vengeful. They're trying to say in here that her lawsuit was legal claims about sexual harassment. But she never officially did anything remotely like an actual complaint about sexual harassment. Nothing happened until she got angry at Justin because she thought he was behind the criticism of her. Doesn't that sound like revenge? Retaliation? There was no legal claim at all to be retaliated against until over a year and a half after the supposed sexual harassment. This was supposed to have happened during the first filming before the strike. That was early 2023. And nothing was filed until December. The last day of December 2024 was this lawsuit. And 11 days before that, a complaint in the California Civil Department. When she was good and angry because she thought Justin had caused the criticism against her. This was never about sexual harassment claims. If it were, that would have been handled the correct way. As I showed in my last episode, a simple Google tells you how to deal with this, directly with SAG-AFTRA. As an excuse for why she never filed an official complaint, she rambles on and on about saying something to Wayfair and then saying something to an executive at Sony. And they're like, oh, you have to take this to Wayfair. That's the best you could do? That's the best your husband could do? You couldn't Google how to handle this? You don't have it in your SAG-AFTRA materials? I showed you how easy it was to find this information. But to me, yeah, you're right, it's a retaliation lawsuit. But it's Blake who's retaliating. She had been able to push Justin around, but when she got this criticism and he wouldn't stand up and take the blame for it, what did she say? If you don't make this public apology and say it's your fault that I'm getting criticized, the gloves are coming off. And then we get this lawsuit. Then we get this New York Times article. You're right, it's a retaliatory lawsuit. You're just wrong about who's trying to do the retaliating. And you know what? Those breadcrumbs you talked about, you sure left a lot of them to prove that it's you retaliating. Blake ignored all industry standards that were at her disposal because she had a specific goal in mind. And that goal is exactly what she said to this music producer. She wanted to be the new lead finishing the movie. She needed Justin to actually do the finishing, and then she needed a means to dispose of him if he got in the way. You can see all of that in this music producer's video because we know the timing of it. He says so. The movie hadn't come out yet. She'd already told him she was the lead. Who knows how many people she told that to. Now, as long as Justin stayed quiet and kept giving in to her demands, everything was fine. But when he said, no, I won't take the blame for this, she realized he just might start standing up for himself. And then, bam, suddenly, a lawsuit. Now, they try to threaten this civil code that California has passed and say, oh, you want to choose California law? Well, guess what? You've got this to worry about. That's only if her lawsuit is legally sound, based on actual evidence, and not lies in order to steal his movie. Now, let's talk about this California Civil Code Section 47.1, Incident of Sexual Assault, Harassment, or Discrimination Privileged Communications. The very first thing we read, a communication made by an individual without malice regarding an incident of sexual assault, harassment, or discrimination is privileged under Section 47. It has to be made without malice. Part B talks about compensation for litigation costs. C. This section shall only apply to an individual that has, or at any time had, a reasonable basis to file a complaint of sexual assault, harassment, or discrimination, whether the complaint is, or was, filed or not. We still have quantifying words like reasonable basis. Indeed, there's even more. For the purposes of this section, communication means factual information related to an incident of sexual assault, harassment, or discrimination experienced by the individual making the communication, including, but not limited to, any of the following. And then it goes on to list sexual assault, harassment, workplace harassment or discrimination, all the way on down to cyberbullying. But what constitutes sexual harassment? Is any claim valid as long as a woman says, hey, I was sexually harassed? Does that mean from the legal standpoint that she was definitely sexually harassed and so she falls under Section 47.1? Look at number 2. It says an act of sexual harassment as described in Section 51.9. What does Section 51.9 say? It starts off establishing the relationship, like a business, service professional, doctor, that sort of thing. But we're going to jump down to point 2. Here's where it defines it. The defendant has made sexual advances. We all know what that means. Trying to get someone to have sex with you. That hasn't happened. Solicitations, sexual requests, demands for sexual compliance by the plaintiff, or engaged in other verbal, visual, or physical conduct of a sexual nature or of a hostile nature based on gender that were what? Unwelcome and pervasive or severe. This comes down to interpretation. Some of the things that she's claimed, she said for Jamie, he made eye contact with her while she was breastfeeding. She didn't even say, he looked at my breasts. She said he made eye contact. Does that legally qualify as sexual harassment? Justin remarked that her clothes were sexy, a description that we have seen her on multiple occasions use to describe the look that she was going for when she was selecting the clothes. Does that qualify for legal sexual harassment? She talks about being shown a birth video because they were going to be filming a birthing scene. Does that qualify as sexual harassment? Was it pervasive or severe? Notice unwelcome by itself isn't enough. It says unwelcome and pervasive or severe. Let's not forget Justin has not been convicted of sexual harassment. She never filed a complaint so that he could be investigated and either be found guilty or not guilty. Nothing anywhere has said this man is guilty of sexual harassment. So, how quick could a judge be to grant this motion to dismiss? Because looking at what the actual civil code says to define sexual harassment, that's up to a jury to decide. That's not really up to the judge to decide. So this smoking gun they think they have might be more of a BB gun. So I know a lot of you lost hope when you saw this latest motion to dismiss filed by Blake. You have to remember, Justin has not been proven guilty of anything. If this goes to trial, a jury will decide whether or not Blake's accusations are credible. If they are not, her accusations will not fall under the protections of this code. It's the very first thing they say, without malice. Have we determined Blake's actions are without malice? This communication has to be factual information. Does she have factual information? Again, that's up to a jury to decide. If the judge does not find the slightest possibility that a juror may find for Justin, he is not supposed to grant this motion to dismiss, because it's not up to him to decide who is telling the truth in this case. So I don't feel that all is lost here. And as for the gymnastics that Blake's lawyers are doing right now, trying so hard to make it like this 17-point document was an actual filing of harassment to try to say that it's past the statute of limitations, it's simply not the case. It doesn't matter what they purport to say was discussed during this meeting. The signed document is not an admission that there was harassment, because it doesn't even make a claim that there was harassment. Because of their failure to have an official business meeting with recorded minutes or with the union rep, they cannot apply anything else to this 17-point document. It doesn't say everything we discussed tonight and what we discussed listed out. Whatever verbal obscenities were hurled at them or accusations that were made orally, none of that is on this 17-point document. The way they're trying to express that it is, it simply isn't. And as I say, look at the breadcrumbs Blake left behind. They go a long way to saying this is not without malice. This is not factual information. And they're so bitter about Steve Sorowitz. Are they mad that their clients aren't willing to spend that much money to them? What is it? They bring up all the same claims that were in the other motions to dismiss about this impermissible group pleading. I'm getting tired of repeating it over and over again, but it's a conspiracy and a collusion that they all worked on together. At this moment, they can't define what everyone's specific role was, but that they were in it together. And they've already explained the legal sound reasons that they have, that all of those descriptions that they're asking for are not necessary at this time, but will come clearer after discovery and can be cleaned up with an amended complaint. Now they go so far as to say that this 17-point list was a publishing of her alleged defamatory sexual harassment. Have they read this document? Nowhere in the document is there a sexual harassment claim. Nowhere in the document do they sign and say, yes, we admit we sexually harassed you. The only document that was signed was that one. And there's no harassment claim, and there's no admission to harassment on that document. So they're trying to say that because of the 17-point list, which was simply her demands to come back to work, that time's up. But that's not what that document is. And you know what? Had they had an actual union rep there, had they actually held a real business meeting, they would have actual minutes about this meeting, and they could say, look, this was discussed, and that was discussed, and here everyone signed it. But they didn't do that. They had a scream fest, they had wild accusations, and then they had this one document to be signed that did not contain what they're claiming that it contained. Where's the actual complaint? Supposedly, she did an actual complaint to Wayfair. Supposedly, she did an actual complaint to Sony. Why haven't you produced those? Why are you using this 17-point thing and saying this is the proof that there was sexual harassment? Because there is no other proof of it. Her own publicist, in her documents just last week, said she had no idea about the sexual harassment. Until when? There is no proof that any of this happened. But there's plenty of proof that Blake was the one making threats. There's plenty of proof that Blake was taking this movie over. There was already enough just in Justin's texts, and we have her telling people that she was the lead to finish the movie, and no proof of Blake's accusations for this bold of a document to be put out there. Then they say yet another of the First Amendment complaint's insurmountable deficiencies is its utter failure to allege actual malice. For example, that Miss Lively subjectively did not believe the sexual harassment allegations she raised. Other than many pages of empty bluster, the First Amendment complaint not only fails to allege actual malice, it pleads just the opposite by demonstrating her good faith beliefs. But that's all they are at this point. Allegations that have not been proven. All of the things that have been put forth, in fact, prove them to be false, and her motives, with each release of information, become clearer and clearer. So this argument starts to fall pretty flat, doesn't it? They talk about a conversation between Justin and Miss Nathan, where they say she genuinely believes she's right, and that all of this is unjust. And they say, oh, this shows good faith beliefs. Speaking to someone's delusions does not kill the lawsuit. They were not saying Blake's right. It does show that they're mystified at the thought of her actually believing these, which to me clearly shows that they're both saying it didn't happen, but wow, she really believes this, doesn't she? Which is, by the way, opinion. In case you guys were wondering, because you seem really confused about what's fact and what's opinion. They say that the First Amendment complaint resorts to implausible conjecture and conspiracy theories to allege that she falsified her allegations. You mean like saying there was an invisible smear campaign? An invisible smear campaign that can't be traced so far? I mean, just the word invisible? Isn't that implausible conjecture and conspiracy theory? That's what your client said. An invisible smear campaign. But all the accusations Justin has made against Blake, on the other hand, came with mountains of receipts. That Exhibit A that you all want to be struck. But where's Blake's proof? When someone can't come forth with actual complaints and actual proof, doesn't that point to falsified allegations? And then they say that, on one hand, that she's described as a powerful Hollywood superstar who, along with her influential husband, wielded power to steal creative control over the film. But on the other hand, they claim she was so powerless that the only way she could have any power was by manufacturing sexual harassment allegations almost a year in advance in a Machiavellian long game. These two concepts contradict each other and therefore cannot coexist. What are you talking about? Of course they couldn't have just gone in and taken over without some reason to make Justin buckle. They're not that powerful, but were they powerful enough to scare him with threats like this? Yes. And it takes that kind of power and that kind of boldness and that kind of lack of morals to say, hey, I'm going to accuse you of this if you don't let me do this. You think the brand new actors playing the young kids, you think they could have had power to do something like that? No. But without something like that to hold over someone's head, no one has that kind of power to just come in and take the movie over just on their own power. This isn't a contradiction. The allegations are the tool they used to flex their power, and they are this conniving, as evidenced by her telling the music producer she was the lead finishing the film. She's a conniver in her own video, in her own interview when she says, I come into an interview all nice, like I'm just going to be hired as an actress, and then once I get the part, then I exert my power and start taking over.
I would show up on a set, I knew that they just wanted me to show up and look cute and stand on a little pink sticker where I'm supposed to go and say what I'm supposed to say, but I also knew that that wasn't fulfilling for me, that I wanted to be a part of the storytelling, that I wanted to be a part of the narrative, whether that be in the writing, in the costume design, in creating the character. And sometimes I had directors or producers or writers who would welcome that and invite that once they saw that I was able to offer that. And sometimes I would have people who really resented that because they were like, we just hired you to be an actor. Yet when I went in the meetings, I would just seem like I'm just there to be the actor and ready to get the gig. I wouldn't reveal that I actually need to have authorship in order to feel fulfilled. So I think that for them, sometimes that might have felt like a rug pull because you're like, you're trying to assert yourself into something that we didn't hire you to do.
This is her own admission. Is she conniving? Did she not send walls of texts to Justin saying, I wrote this and my husband and Taylor are waiting to hear your response. They want you to put this in the movie. And then a year later, when the movie's out, in an interview she says, my husband wrote it? Is that not conniving? Is that not conspiratorial? Is that not a Machiavellian long game? And here they bring up this 17-point list again that they signed. It doesn't say she was sexually harassed on that document. And then they call this extortion claim convoluted. You guys need to get out there and take a look at the internet. You need to see what your client's been up to and running her mouth about. It's not convoluted at all. And then they say the Wayfair parties did not give in to her demands for creative control of the movie. Threats which are never specifically identified anywhere in the First Amendment complaint because they never happened. Did you read the messages between the producers and the editors? And then they say, oh, she did all this for no extra pay? Without additional compensation, they say. More work? She bullied her way into doing more work than she was contractually obligated to do without additional compensation, while Wayfair profited handsomely from the movie's blockbuster success. So why did she do it then? Are you guys trying to say that she had to do this? If she didn't choose to do this? You don't see the texts of her asking Justin for these dailies, which she knew she had no right to ask for, and telling these music producers she was the lead in charge of finishing this film. Prove you wrong. Her doing more than was contractually required while the producers and editors are mad saying she's taken over the film? You're acting like she did them a favor? She took her cut, snuck it over, played it with Sony telling her no by her own admission? She sits there and tells the crowd, Sony told her no, but I've got it here in my purse. Sony had to fight with her about her cut because it didn't score as high as Justin's cut. But she wanted her cut in there. There is way too much proof for you to sit here on this document and pretend that she didn't take this movie over. Doing more than you're contractually required is not the way to word this. That's when someone is making you do something more than what you're willing to do, more than what your contract says. When you're pushing in, like she admits that she does, that's like getting a job at a bank as a teller, and you come in and sit down in the president's office and say, no, I'm going to do your job now. That's what she did. And going out and telling people, oh, yeah, I'm the new lead of the bank. I'm the new president of the bank. And you want to say, oh, she did it for no extra pay? What did she get out of it? She got a PGA mark, didn't she? That she also extorted. And they've got the documents to prove they did not want to write her that letter. And that's where I've got to stop today. I just wanted to get a little something out because I don't know how many days it will be before I can be back here with you. But I saw that and just had to say something right off the bat. Because I know that when people see these motions to dismiss, they get a little worried, and I get messages saying, oh no, I'm so worried about this. Motions to dismiss, everybody tries it. Very few make it through. This isn't going to make it through. They're nasty. I mean, she's got some high-priced lawyers. They got to do their best. But here's the thing. They got a client that can't shut her mouth. They got a client that left breadcrumbs all along the way of exactly what she was doing. So, like I said, yeah, it's a retaliation lawsuit. But Blake's the one retaliating. I'll be back with you as soon as I can. Till then, this is Cassidy O'Connell saying stay well and stay tuned.